All right, welcome to week number 12. And you are not watching this live, obviously. This is a recorded lesson. And I hoped to cover points that we might have glossed over a little bit in the other classes, and to make sure that I am covering content that I know is going to be on the final exam. So let's get right into it. Obviously, Gary, he's our GOAT. He wants to welcome you back. And I want to start off with playing a video talking about the Marshmallow Challenge. Now, this is something that I would have done with you in class. Unfortunately, we can't. So the least I can do is show you what it is and talk to you a little bit about it. It's super interesting. It's a great challenge to engage in. If you ever have an opportunity to run an exercise for your work or with a group of people, a little bit of a challenge, highly recommend doing this. Everybody who does it has a lot of fun, and it's quite interesting, the different achievements, the different towers that people build. So let's watch the video.
Several years ago here at TED, Peter Skillman introduced a design challenge called the Marshmallow Challenge. And the idea is pretty simple. Teams of 4 have to build the tallest freestanding structure out of 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string, and a marshmallow. And the marshmallow has to be on top. And though it seems really simple, it's actually pretty hard because it forces people to collaborate very quickly. And so I thought this was an interesting idea, and I incorporated it into a design workshop, and it was a huge success. And since then, I've conducted about 70 design workshops across the world with students and designers and architects, even the CTOs of the Fortune 50. And there's something about this exercise that reveals very deep lessons about the nature of collaboration, and I'd like to share some of them with you. So normally, most people begin by orienting themselves to the task. They talk about it, they figure out what it's going to look like, they jockey for power, then they spend some time planning, organizing, they sketch in, they lay out spaghetti. They spend the majority of their time assembling the sticks into ever-growing structures, and then finally, just as they're running out of time, someone takes out the marshmallow, and then they gingerly put it on top, and they stand back, and ta-da! They admire their work. But what really happens most of the time is that the ta-da turns into an uh-oh, because the weight of the marshmallow causes the entire structure to buckle and to collapse. So there are a number of people who have a lot more uh-oh moments than others. And among the worst are recent graduates of business school. It's amazing. They lie, they cheat, they get distracted, and they produce really lame structures. And of course, there's teams that have a lot more ta-da structures. And among the best are recent graduates of kindergarten. And it's pretty amazing, as Peter tells us. Not only do they produce the tallest structures, but they're the most interesting structures of them all. So the question you want to ask is, how come? Why? What is it about them? And Peter likes to say that none of the kids spend any time trying to be CEO of Spaghetti Inc., right? They don't spend time jockeying for power. But there's another reason as well. And the reason is that business students are trained to find the single right plan, right? And then they execute on it. And then what happens is when they put the marshmallow on top, they run out of time, and what happens? It's a crisis. Sound familiar, right? Okay. What kindergartners do differently is that they start with the marshmallow and they build prototypes, successive prototypes, always keeping the marshmallow on top. So they have multiple times to fix, and they build prototypes along the way. So designers recognize this type of collaboration as the essence of the iterative process. And with each version, kids get instant feedback about what works and what doesn't work. So the capacity to play and prototype is really essential. But let's look at how different teams perform. So the average for most people is around 20 inches. Business school students, about half of that. Lawyers, a little better, but not much better than that. Kindergarten's better than most adults. Who does the very best? Architects and engineers. thankfully. And 39 inches is the tallest structure I've seen. And why is it? Because they understand triangles and self-reinforcing geometrical patterns are the key to building self-reinforced stable structures. So CEOs, a little bit better than average, but here's where it gets interesting. If you put an executive admin on the team, they get significantly better. It's incredible. You know, you look around, you go, oh, that team's going to win. You can just tell beforehand. And why is that? Because they have special skills of facilitation. They manage the process. They understand the process. And any team who manages and pays a close attention to work will significantly improve the team's performance. Specialized skills and facilitation skills, the combination leads to strong success. If you have 10 teams that typically perform, you'll get maybe 6 or so that have standing structures. And I tried something interesting. I thought, let's up the ante once. So I offered a $10,000 prize of software to the winning team. So what do you think happened to these design students? What was the result? Here's what happened. Not one team had a standing structure. Not one had, if anyone had built, say, a 1-inch structure, they'd have taken home the prize. So isn't it interesting that high stakes have a strong impact? We did the exercise again with the same students. What do you think happened then? So now they understand the value of prototyping. So the same team went from being the very worst to being among the very best. They produced the tallest structures in the least amount of time. So there's deep lessons for us about the nature of incentives and success. So you might ask, why would anyone actually spend time running a Marshmallow challenge? And the reason is I help create digital tools and processes to help teams build cars and video games and visual effects. And what the Marshmallow Challenge does is it helps them identify the hidden assumptions. Because frankly, every project has its own marshmallow, doesn't it? The challenge provides a shared experience, a common language, a common stance to build the right prototype. And so this is the value of the experience of this so simple exercise. And those of you who are interested may want to go to marshmallowchallenge.com. It's a blog that you can look at how to build the marshmallows. There are step-by-step instructions on this. There are crazy examples from around the world of how people tweak and adjust the system. There's world records that are on this as well. And the fundamental lesson, I believe, is that design truly is a contact sport. It demands that we bring all of our senses to the task and that we apply the very best of our thinking, our feeling, and our doing to the challenge that we have at hand. And sometimes a little prototype of this experience is all that it takes to turn us from an uh-oh moment to a ta-da moment, and that can make a big difference. Thank you very much.
All right, what are we talking about today? So you just saw the Marshmallow Challenge. We're going to move on from that. We're going to talk about effective slide design. We've covered that a little bit, but I want to cover some key points that, like I said, I think maybe we glossed over. We're going to talk about what the difference is between gatekeeper and decision maker. We're going to go over features, advantages, and benefits, and also talk again about what's in it for me to make sure you understand those concepts. We're going to discuss Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with that. We're going to cover quickly what closed and open-ended questions are in terms of dealing with potential customers and clients in the sales aspect. And we are going to talk about how to respectfully argue and disagree. Let's think about design. So how do you make your slides look good? Are they simple and are they effective? Let's watch these 2 videos and learn from the experts.
A lot of work goes into creating well-designed PowerPoint slides. Unfortunately, many of the millions of slides that are created every day aren't engaging the audience at all. In fact, many are hard to read and understand. But there are a few really important and easy to implement tips that can really make a difference in your slide design. Let's check them out. Before we get started, a brief thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is a learning platform with lots of great classes. I have a special link for you that gives you 2 months free premium access. You're going to find it in the description of this video, and I'll be chatting more about them towards the end. Now let's get started with my slide design tips. Number 1, visualize your data. Presenting numbers and data can be a challenge. For one, it's probably not the most exciting topic. And second, if you put a lot of data on your slide, the audience is going to be busy reading the slide instead of paying attention to you. Here's an example. A slide like this encourages the audience to read and try to make sense of the data. Their attention is going to be on the slide, not on what you're saying. Instead, you could present it like this. Already from the title of the slide, the audience can get the critical information. The supporting chart makes it easier to interpret the slide. The important thing here is that you guide the eyes to the most important topics and avoid distractions on the slide, which brings me to my next tip. Number 2, use white space and don't clutter. White or negative space refers to the empty space in between your content on the slide. Sometimes we feel the urge to make use of every little space available to us on the slide. We plaster it with information and visual elements. But more isn't necessarily always better. If you throw too much on the screen, you get a cluttered page that's unattractive and difficult to read. People get frustrated when information bombards them. You're going to lose their attention, so don't do that. White space is also important because it creates separation between the objects on your slide and it focuses the eyes on the message you want to get across. It also makes text easier to read. And also for the viewer, it's calming, letting them breathe. And don't get me wrong, white space doesn't have to be white. White space can also be any solid color, or even a blurred background. It just means that there is no other content or design element. Apple is a master when it comes to applying this concept. It creates a feeling of luxury and puts the product in focus. So when designing PowerPoint slides, don't create slides like this, which result in visual overload. The viewer's eyes will be all over the place. Instead, remember a few key rules. Keep the slide background clean. Company logos and other corporate identity elements don't have to be on every single slide. Whitespace principles also apply to your text on the slide. Use a font size that's big enough with generous spacing. If you can't fit all your text this way, it's probably too much text. So it comes down to less is more. Give the elements on your slide some breathing room. This way the eyes land straight on the main message and the slide is going to have a greater impact. Number 3, apply instant design ideas. Design Ideas is a new feature of Microsoft 365 that's powered by Microsoft's AI or Intelligent Services. You can find it on the Home tab, which, as we know, is the prime real estate in any Office product. So what does it do? Let's say we have this rather uninspiring slide about some timeline, and we want to make it more visually appealing. If you click on Design Ideas up here, it will make several suggestions, like this one, or this one is nice too. And immediately, by just clicking a button, you have a much improved version of the slide. Or if you work with images in your slides, Design Ideas can convert these uncropped pictures into a neatly organized slide automatically for you, like this one. It also doesn't seem to like bullet points that much, so if it sees a slide like this, it will suggest a more visual version of the slide. You can exchange the icons or colors as you like, but if the shape or color is a part of the slide background, you can't adjust it. If you have poor design skills like me, or if you're just in a hurry, then Design Ideas can definitely give you a good start. Number 4, use scalable vector graphics. The next tip is about the images in your presentations. When you use raster images like JPGs or PNGs in your slides, be careful when resizing them. Take a look at this Excel logo here. It looks fine in the current size. I can scale it down without problems, but when I scale it up, it's going to become pixelated. Scaling down is okay, scaling up is not. Not if you have these images. But if you use SVGs, which is short for Scalable Vector Graphics, you can scale up without pixelation. SVGs can be resized from small to large without losing quality because they consist of mathematical lines and fills instead of pixels. They are also much smaller in size. For example, the icons option in the Insert tab are SVGs, and recent versions of PowerPoint allows you to edit these graphics. You can use the eyedropper tool to change the fill, or you can even disassemble the SVG image by converting it to an office shape. This way you can change the fill of individual parts of the image. So whenever you can, choose vector graphics over raster images. You can scale them up without loss of resolution, and they are smaller in size as well. Number 5, apply the rule of thirds. In photography and cinematography, there is a basic guideline about how a shot should be composed. It's called the rule of thirds. This also applies to PowerPoint slides. Let me show you how. Here we have a slide with an image and some text. Let's see how we can improve it. The rule of thirds basically divides the canvas into 3 horizontal rows and 3 vertical columns. The lines intersect at these 4 points. Guess what these are called? PowerPoints. What are the odds? The rule says that the key elements of this slide should be placed around these PowerPoints or along the lines. So let's position the image like this with the head on this PowerPoint and the text boxes along the horizontal lines like this. Let's compare them side by side. What do you think? Most people will prefer the second version. It's just more visually appealing. An easy way to apply the rule of thirds in PowerPoint is by using the guides. Just go to the View tab and check the box next to Guides. You can add an additional horizontal and vertical guide to create the grid. Give the rule of thirds a try and check it out for yourself. So these are my tips when it comes to PowerPoint slide design. I hope you found them helpful.
Hello and welcome to this exciting new slide design lesson. I will teach you how to properly work with images, how to use our shape tools to chop up images and place them into our slide composition. I go to PowerPoint, I have a new presentation opened, and I have 3 text boxes. This will be the core for our slide. Now for the font, this time I've used the Lato font. Lato is a really great font. Once you install it, you should have here in PowerPoint several fonts with the Lato to select, for example, Hairline, Light, Heavy, and Lato font can be downloaded from www.latofont.com. A really simple website which allows you to download a current version of this font. So at first I want to select a dark background. I was thinking something blue, gray, something like over those colors. So I'll try to select an interesting color, something maybe a bit darker. I can go here, nudge it a bit, and I think this would be a good base, a good color for our background. Something grayish blue, navy, like this. Now I'll select those 2 fonts and make them white, so they are better visible. Or to be honest, if I see it now, this perhaps should be a bit more gray, so like the title stands a little bit more out. Now this color should set the tone of our contrast color. I'll select a green color or a blue color. It all depends what you want to achieve, but since I'm very often going for blue, let me take a different approach and maybe even go yellow or this green one. This should be fine. Maybe a bit darker or something more olive like this. Yep, I like this color. Well, maybe it doesn't look as good now, but we will see in a moment. Now, how to work properly with some interesting designs and pictures. I'll go to Insert, I go to Shapes, and I select the Shape tool. I'll select my rounded rectangle and place the first object here. Now, I want to make the corners very rounded. So you can take this yellow dot and just click on it and go to the right side. So it gets more rounded. you can adjust it like this. Now, this is my first object. I'll rotate it. If you don't know how to rotate, you can click on this one and rotate it around, or you can go to the shape options. I believe these options, position, or no, they are in the size, and we have the rotation in degrees if you want to be 100% precise. Okay, I have my first object. Maybe I make it a bit smaller, bigger here. And this object, the first object, should have the same color as the text, because those two objects will set the tone and the coloristic of the entire slide. Now, I already see I don't like this green as much, so let me try to select something else. So I go again to custom, I go to the green colors, and I try to select a more washed out color, something maybe closer to gray, like this. I'll try how this looks. Now I see I'm perfect. Instead of making text fill, I made shape fill, Ctrl Z, but I have this color already here. I click on it here. Well, perhaps this will work. Now I can work on other objects. I want to copy the first object, place it around here. I will try to make equal spaces. Next object, this will be bigger, maybe even longer. I can simply extend it. This is no problem. Like this, a bit to the top. I see they should be more rotated, but that's okay. I copy one more object. I make it even wider. I see this goes too far. I try to place them right. Now I select all of them and I'll try somehow to align them. I'll try to make equal spaces, and I believe this is all right. I select the first three objects, I right click on them, group, and I group them. It's very important to have them grouped. I'll show you why in a moment. Now I go to picture or texture field, I select file, and from my new project files, I select city photo. Now this photograph filled out those objects. If they would be ungrouped, each one would be filled with this image, and this would look horrible. But if they are grouped, this looks like that. Now I see this will look better if I will maybe have even more objects like this. Now let me preview this slide. Now I see I need to make a few adjustments before I'm ready, so bear with me. I'll try to resize and reshape everything to make it look a bit better. Okay, I have it prepared. I select all four of these, group, group. I have my current group. I right click format picture. I select the bucket, picture or texture fill. It will fill automatically. This is how I would leave this slide. If you want to be a little bit more fancy, I go to shapes. I place a new shape. No outline, eyedropper, and I make this filling to make it exactly like the background. And I'll try to cut out this place and this place to make it even more appealing. Ctrl C, rotate it, hold the shift key. Now watch what happens when I play the slide. This is the end result, and it all depends on what picture you select, but we created a nice border, we entered the picture, and we have some small text on the left side. Maybe the picture should be a bit more colorful, but this is one way of approaching a nice slide design. If you would like to design more slides like that and be better with PowerPoint, you can find the link to my course in the description below with a heavy discount only for YouTube viewers who see this video. My name is Andrzej Pach, and this was a slide design tutorial on how to approach a slide design with some images and text in it.
When it comes to integrating visuals and text, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this slide per se, but it's not very appealing. It certainly doesn't inspire. The visual is easy to see, but it's small on the page, right? There's a lot of white space here, which on the one hand you want to go for, but sometimes it's good to have a little bit of a wow or impact with your slide. When that's the case, you use your visuals to your advantage. This is the London Eye. It's the same information that was on the other slide, but it's laid out in such a way that it's far more appealing. Obviously different pictures. but I think you can see there's a big difference between the impact that this one slide will have over the other. And I'm not suggesting you do this to all your slides, because then it becomes too much, right? Less is more when it comes to this type of technique. But you can definitely insert a few of these into your presentation and help break up the monotony that the white space can incur. We talked about having too much information on the screen, or the slide, I should say, and we know that it's a problem, but sometimes you can't get around it. What you can do, is crop out the piece that you want to highlight and then blow up the information. And that way you can simplify it and also let the audience know what they should be focusing at. It's pretty hard not to understand here that the point we're trying to emphasize is that it's a $55 smartphone. All right, let's talk about the audience again. This concept of what's in it for me. The audience is thinking about this all of the time, whether it's conscious or subconscious. They want to know why this is important to them. And unless you make that very clear, either implicitly or subtly, they still need to know. And you can do this verbally when you're speaking to them with the words that you use, and you can do it non-verbally through images and the writing and your gestures and body language. But you need to remember, and this is something we used to say quite a lot when I was back in sales, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. We'd like to think that we are super logical beings, that we don't make decisions that aren't in our best interest. But the truth is, we do not trust information from people we don't trust. Bottom line. I mean, the idea of don't kill the messenger, we do that. We constantly judge people, who they are. We talk about them specifically in their character traits, and then the message takes on a different meaning because of that. So if you don't tell the audience what's in it for them, then they're not going to care what you have to say. And if they don't care what you have to say, then they're not going to trust you. So you need to let the audience know that you care about them. The way that you tell them you care about them is by letting them know what's in it for them. I care about you because I know what you want. I care about you because I went out of my way to figure out what you want. And I care about you because I went out of my way to make sure that my presentation speaks to what you want and what you need. That's the power of catering to WIIFM. What's in it for me? Here's an example. The expertise we provide will improve your morale, boost your sales, and in turn increase your profits by 25%. Pretty straightforward. Sounds almost rudimentary, but you need to include statements like this throughout your presentation. If you want to identify the benefits, then you need to talk about features. So what are the difference between features and benefits? But first, let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Starting from the bottom, we have our physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. If those needs aren't being met, then the categories above them become really unimportant. If all of a sudden the room you're in ran out of air, you can no longer breathe, you're not really thinking about your employment or the long-term health of yourself or your family. Your only thought is, I can't breathe, I need air. So only after physiological needs are met do we start caring about the next level, which is safety needs. And that's your personal security, your employment, your health, resources, etc. Again, only after those are satisfied do we then care about the next level, which is love and belonging. That's your friendship, your intimacy, your sense of connection, your family. The next level up is esteem, respect, self-esteem for you, your status, your recognition, your strength and freedom. Now, it's important to recognize that there can be some overlap within these categories. You can wrap your self-esteem, you can wrap it into your family or your sense of connection. You can wrap recognition into friendship. So they're not hard lines, they're dotted lines, but it's important to understand the levels. And then the highest level, which quite frankly most people don't exist in at all, and I'm not saying I do, but this is something to strive for, is the self-actualization, the desire to become more, the desire for growth, looking inward and becoming more of your potential. Most people, for whatever reason, don't ever achieve that level. And again, I'm not blaming anybody for that. I'm just saying that's the reality of existence, human existence. So these are the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Why is that important? Because when you're talking about why people buy, they buy to fulfill a need. And so if you can make sure that you are providing that need for them, you're helping them understand why they need what it is you're selling. You can see by this graphic that people will use logic and emotion to drive their decisions. We call them buying motives. But here's the reality, folks, and I think this might even be a test question. Most people, 90% of the time, and I'm making that number up, but it's a huge amount of time, will buy on emotion and justify with logic. They will make their decision about what they're going to do emotionally, and then they will justify it by logical means. So, why did you buy that red sports car? Well, I bought the red sports car because I needed a new vehicle, and this particular one is very aerodynamic, and it lets other people know that I'm successful. That's important in my business because people want to do business with somebody who's successful, and so I bought the car, the Corvette or the BMW or whatever you want to call it. I bought that because I need to portray a certain level of respect. Sure, all sounds good, possibly true, but the reality is the sports car was purchased emotionally and then justified with fact. Why red? Not a lot of logic goes into color choice for cars. True fact, cars used to only be black. When Henry Ford first created the assembly line, and the Model T Ford was the first car coming off of the assembly line, the actual ad campaign stated, you can have it in any color you want as long as that color is black. I kid you not. So it's only later that colors started to be introduced to the availability of automobiles. Let's talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic benefits. Intrinsic means exactly how it sounds. It comes from the inside. So it's a natural outcome of doing something good or using a product. That's an intrinsic benefit. Extrinsic, meaning outside, exterior, means it's an add-on. It doesn't necessarily come from within. It doesn't come from using the product itself. It's an extra benefit indirectly resulting from the use of that product or service. So, for example, if a traveling professional goes to a particular hotel and they know that their business needs are taken care of, or a sightseeing tourist takes pleasure and excitement at staying at that same hotel, but it's in the heart of the city and that's where they want to be. Families with young children, they feel safe and they feel comfortable in their homes. Stressed out people who need to relax, if they get that relaxing feeling of calm and tranquility, then that's what they're looking for. So these are intrinsic benefits. They are exactly related to what it is that the person is looking for. Extrinsic benefits, however, using those same people then, could be, for the traveling professional, reward points that they get for staying at that particular hotel, or maybe free business services including Wi-Fi, etc. These are things that they would want anyway, but they're added on as a value. The tourist that's staying at the hotel, maybe they get passes to museum or other events around town included in the hotel. Extrinsic benefit. Families with young children, intrinsically they're feeling safe. Extrinsically, they are more likely to engage in local activities with other people's children. So an extrinsic benefit to that. People who are now relaxed and intrinsically benefiting from that relaxation, maybe they also get some special discounts on other spa services that they go to. So you can see that they're related, but there is quite a difference between intrinsic and extrinsic benefits. And you need to understand both when you are talking about your features, advantages, and benefits. So a lot of people focus on the features of something when they're trying to persuade or sell. And it's good, it's important to focus on features, but it's only one part of the equation. Your features are the easiest things to identify. So what if I hold up this pen, for example, what are the features of this pen? Well, I can hold it in my hand. It's small. It's light. Right? It has a lid. It's blue. It writes in blue. The ink is internal. Right? These are all features of this pen. What are the benefits? I'll skip to the benefits. Well, the benefit of it being light is that I won't get fatigued as easily when I'm using it. Why is the lid a benefit? Well, because it keeps the ink from drying out. Why is having the ink on the inside a benefit? Because it means I don't have to, they used to use quills and ink. You dip the ink in, right? Dip the ink in. Don't have to do that anymore. The ink keeps flowing. Not indefinitely. It does run out, but lasts quite a long time. So you can see the difference there between features and benefits. Features are the easiest thing to identify. They are the characteristics about what it is that you're offering. The benefits answer why someone would value those features. The advantages are what the features do. They tend to be factual, but they aren't necessarily connected to the need. Here's another example about a sleeping bag. The features, they've got 1 inch insulation. There's a nylon shell. I'm going to put this pen down. There's a nylon shell with lining, and it sheds water. The advantage is that it helps retain body heat on cold nights and it keeps you dry on wet nights. Benefits, you feel well rested, and right now they are currently on sale. You can see how that works. If you were to put this into a sentence, you might say our sleeping bags have a 1 inch layer of insulation, which is twice as thick as our competitors. This helps to retain body heat on cold nights. You'll be warm all night, which means that you'll get a great sleep. You'll feel well rested for a day of fun and activities. And right now you can take advantage of this limited time offer. They are currently 20% off. All right. So I hope that clears up features, benefits, advantages, what's in it for me, understanding your audience. Obviously, email me or write in the discussion board if you need more clarification on that. But all of those topics are on the exam. Lastly, I want to talk about the hierarchy of disagreement. Now, this comes from an article that Paul Graham wrote. He talked about how to disagree, and he wrote this back in 2008 when the internet was still, it was nowhere near as impactful as it is today, but it was still growing. It was huge though. And the web was, and it still is, but turning more into conversation. And 20 years ago, writers wrote and readers read. The web lets readers respond, and increasingly they do, in comment threads, on forums, and their own blog posts. Many who respond to something disagree with it. That's to be expected. Agreeing tends to motivate people less than disagreeing. And when you agree, there's less to say. You could expand on something the author said, but they have probably already explored the most interesting implications. When you disagree, you're entering territory they may not have explored. Enter the disagreement. So the reason this was created was to highlight what most people do when they are arguing online, and also to help others understand what you should be doing. So at the very bottom we have name calling. This is the lowest form of disagreement. It's the most common, and we've all seen comments like this: "You're an idiot." It's important to realize that more articulate name calling, by the way, has just as little weight. A comment like "the author is a self-important ignoramus" is really nothing more than a pretentious version of "you are an idiot." An ad hominem attack is not quite as weak as mere name calling. It might actually carry some weight. For example, if a senator wrote an article saying senators' salaries should be increased, one could respond, "Of course he would say that. He's a senator." This wouldn't refute the author's argument, but it may at least be relevant to the case. It's still very weak from a disagreement standpoint, though. If there's something wrong with the senator's argument, you should say what that is. If there isn't, what difference does it make that they're a senator? Saying that an author lacks the authority to write about a topic is a variant of ad hominem, and a particularly useless sort, because good ideas often come from outsiders. The question is whether the author is correct or not. If his lack of authority caused him to make the mistake, point those out. If it didn't, then it's not a problem. So we do this a lot. We try to discredit people because of their position or where their lot in life is. You can do it, but it's not the highest form of disagreement, and it's certainly not what's going to get you the most respect when you're out there in the business world. Responding to tone. The next level up, where we see response to the writing rather than the writer. The lowest form of these is to disagree with the author's tone. Example: "I can't believe the author dismisses intelligent design in such a cavalier fashion." Though better than attacking the author, this is still a weak form of disagreement. It matters much more whether the author is wrong or right than what their tone may be, especially since tone is very hard to judge in writing specifically. And if someone has a chip on their shoulder about a topic that they might be offended by, that tone, other readers may seem or feel the tone is neutral. So if the worst thing you can say about something is to criticize the tone, then you're not really saying much. Is the author flippant but correct? That's better than being grave and wrong. If the author is incorrect, then that's what you need to talk about. Contradiction. Now we start getting to responses that go against what is being said and not so much by how it's being said or by whom. This is the lowest form of argument that simply states an opposing case with little or no supporting evidence. This is often combined with ad hominem statements, as in, I can't believe the author dismisses intelligent design in such a cavalier fashion. Intelligent design is a legitimate scientific theory. Contradiction can sometimes have some weight. Sometimes merely seeing the opposing case stated explicitly is not to see that it's right. But usually evidence will help. So if you're merely contradicting, you're not saying much other than you're wrong. Counter-argument is contradiction plus reasoning and evidence. When aimed squarely at the original argument, it can be convincing. But it is common for counter-arguments to be aimed at something slightly different. So here's the argument. Littering is a problem in our city. The counter-argument. Littering results in the creation of jobs. People get paid to clean up the litter. So that sounds like a good counter-argument. And often you'll get two people arguing passionately about their position. But they're arguing two different things. If job creation is a problem in the city, then that's different than littering. So you can clean up the litter and still create jobs in other ways and solve both of those problems. Most often, though, people get caught up in the squabble and they don't realize that they're arguing different points. Refutation. This is the most convincing form of disagreement. It's also the rarest because it takes work. You have to find a smoking gun. What's a smoking gun? Is if there's three guns on the table and one of them has smoke coming out of the end of it, you know that's the gun that was used to take the shot, right? That's why it's called a smoking gun. If you can't find an actual quote to disagree with, then maybe you're arguing with a straw man. And a straw man argument, you may have heard the term, it's an informal fallacy based on giving the impression of refuting an opponent's argument while actually refuting an argument that wasn't necessarily presented by the opponent. This is the most powerful form of disagreement by far because you're taking on the actual point of the disagreement. So you're not talking about who they are or their position or their tone or getting caught up in arguing other points that may be made. You're talking about the central point. The quotation you point out as a mistake doesn't need to be the actual statement of the author's main point. It's enough to refute something that depends upon. There you have it, the hierarchy of disagreement. I suggest you go to paulgraham.com and read the essay, at least now. The next time you get into a business dispute with someone or a disagreement and you want to keep it professional, remember to refute the central point or to create refutation. Try not to engage in responding to tone or ad hominem attacks or even counter arguments that don't necessarily talk about the point. All right, folks. That's it for today. So you need to look at moving forward your major team assignments. You're in groups. Pick one of the four scenarios that I laid out for you. If you haven't done so already, and let me know what they are. Devise your plan of attack, and now you have time to work in your teams for this. So next week you'll have that class to work. Thanks very much. Hope you have a good week.